What's up everybody, welcome back to the channel, and today we are talking Nintendo Switch. So if you don't know by now, the Nintendo Switch recently turned 6 years old, I believe last week and a half ago, and it is kind of crazy to me that it's already been 6 years. So I just kind of wanted to do, I guess, a reflective piece here where I kind of talk about the things that I love about the Switch, the things that I kind of hated about the Switch, and just kind of my overall impressions of the console. So if you're not aware, there have been some stuff going on in the background with Nintendo. It looks like they are gearing up for a potential new console within maybe the next year and a half. This means that we are most likely, probably, entering the last year of the Nintendo Switch. So I think maybe, hey, why not? It just turned 6 years old. Let's look back and talk a little bit about the things that I liked and the things that I didn't like, and just kind of go from there. Alright guys, so I'm just going to get the negativity over with, and we're going to start off with the stuff that I didn't like about the Switch, and then we'll move on to the stuff that I liked. Something that I wish the Switch could have done better, and it's really the whole online ecosystem. The online overall for the console is a bit unfortunate. As of right now, I could add friends, I could send friend requests, and I could see when you're online, when you're offline, I could see what games you've played, and I could, I guess, give you a little star so I could have my favorite friends, I guess, on the top whenever I see my friend list. That's really all I could do with them. I know the Switch has a phone app where you can do voice chats with, but it only works with certain games. It's very limited. I haven't used it in a while, so if there's any significant updates on that app, let me know in the comments, just so I could, know for sure. But from what I know, it's really not much going on in that app, and it sucks, man, because I remember when the Switch really, that first year, man, people were looking for people who had Switches. Yo, do you have one? Do you want to link up? What's your friend code? I know people would go on Reddit, post their friend codes, and it was just kind of this thing, and it sucks that Nintendo never really expanded on the communication aspect of it. If voice chat was really too hard for maybe the Switch to do, it would have been nice to at least have the ability to kind of send each other messages, to at least be like, hey, what's up? What are you playing? You want to get on right now? When can you? I really do believe that Nintendo had lightning in a bottle here with the Switch, and for the most part, they delivered. They sold a lot of consoles, and as far as software sales, I believe it's the most they've ever sold from any Nintendo console in history. So I mean, they definitely took advantage of that hype and kind of the market demand for the console. I just feel like they could have had a much bigger, huge online ecosystem going on in the background on top of the fact that they were selling consoles and games. Alright, the second thing I was not really a fan of from the Switch was how they handled the Nintendo Switch online service. Back in 2017, if you had a Nintendo Switch, that first year, online was free. You didn't have to pay for a subscription service, you didn't have to pay a yearly fee, nothing. In 2018, a year later, when they introduced it, they introduced the price, and they introduced the NES games collection that would come with the subscription. Now, looking at it now, back, I think it's really good, right? We have Game Boy Advance, we finally got Game Boy Color, and Game Boy, and Nintendo 64 or whatever, all that stuff. But guys, I mean, we just got the Game Boy stuff a month ago. It basically took Nintendo 6 years to release all these consoles out into their subscription service. Now, this is just my opinion, obviously. At the end of the day, companies need to make money, and they have to figure out their best way to kind of, I guess, make sure that they're profiting and stuff like that. So, I mean, it makes sense to drip feed, but I just feel like the way they did it was few and far in between. The NES was introduced in 2018, and then they didn't introduce Super Nintendo until 2019. That's a full year just to get Super Nintendo games. And then after the Super Nintendo stuff, it wasn't until 2021 when we will see Nintendo 64 get added into the service. So Nintendo took a 2-year gap between these consoles to introduce games. And if you were kind of in the thick of things around that time, it was brutal. The Super Nintendo stuff, the NES stuff was just launched at random. Some months you would get 3 games, some months you would get 1 game, and then we entered into a dry period where we wouldn't get a game for every 2 or 3 months. It just felt very sloppy. It felt like there was no real roadmap as to how they were planning on releasing these games. It just felt sloppy. Whether that's what they intended to or not, it just, from the perspective, I guess, of us, and from mine at least, it just looks sloppy. And then on top of that, with Nintendo 64, when it launched, we had all those issues with the glitches, the emulators. Games like Zelda Ocarina of Time did not look so well. It just, there was like a whole save file issue with Paper Mario, I believe. There was a glitch that could erase your save file. It wasn't the best launch of the console, and it was obviously frustrating because we also raised the price that year. So it was like a 2-year gap for a spotty N64 emulator with glitchy games. It just wasn't a good time. And then 2 years after that, we got Game Boy and Game Boy Advance this year, about a month ago. So just the gaps from all of that, I just not a fan of how they handled that stuff. I just thought they could have done a much better job. And something that I also do not like is the randomization of the games that get released monthly. They recently announced Metroid Fusion that's coming out March 9th, which is tomorrow as of the recording of this video. It means if you're watching this right now, you're probably already playing it. Cool. We're only getting one game though in the month of March from Game Boy Advance, Game Boy Color, N64, Super Nintendo, and NES, plus the Sega Genesis stuff. So the 6 consoles, we're only getting one game on one specific platform. It just feels a little random. It just doesn't feel, oh my god, it just feels a little frustrating. Yes, Metroid Fusion is a great game, but there have been times where we don't hear nothing and they release a game and it's one that none of us really like, and then it just kind of feels like, man, why am I paying for this service? I'm okay with the drip feeding of content, but at least make it consistent. Either announce a roadmap or tell us how it's going to go down, or at least tell us, you know, what to expect. But they don't say nothing with that. At the end of the day, man, we are paying for this subscription, you know, so it's like you have to kind of show us why we're paying for this, you know, make it worthwhile. At least let us know what's going on, keep us in the loop. So all of it just kind of feels poorly handled and randomized. So I know right now it's sounding pretty negative, but we'll get to the positive. Let me just end with one more thing that I really do not like, and it is those Joy-Cons. Guys, I do not like these Joy-Cons. These are not good. I am not a fan of these, and I really hope we move on from this design. Now, we all know about Joy-Con drift, and that's a whole other issue. That's a whole other thing, but it is a black spot in the Joy-Con life. But I'm talking about the form factor. I'm sorry, but the Joy-Cons are not comfortable to hold, man. It's really rough, man. I'm trying to play handheld on my couch or whatever, and after 10, 15, 20 minutes, my hands are cramping up. It doesn't feel comfortable. I'm looking for different ways to hold the thing. It's just not, I feel like I can't really sit there and really get a good amount of playing time without feeling like my thumb is cramping up, without feeling like my hand is gonna cramp up. It's, oh my god, it's just so unfortunate. It was so bad, honestly, that I finally caved in and decided to get these NYXY controllers for my Nintendo Switch. They are much more bigger, they're more comfortable on the hands. I'll show you just kind of a little demo here, I guess. And it's just, it's definitely made my experience handheld a lot more fun, much more comfortable, and I'm very much happy with this purchase. And if you're having cramping issues, I highly recommend you probably go that route. Now, I will say this, definitely, when the Nintendo Switch released, there was nothing like it in the market. It really was one of one. There was nothing really to compare it to. So the Joy-Cons, maybe when they released, they seemed like a good idea at the start, whatever. I just feel like 6 years into the console's life, now looking back with the hindsight that we have, I could honestly say that, yeah, these Joy-Cons definitely are not good. I don't know what Nintendo does moving forward, but I really do hope they do a redesign of this Joy-Cons. Alright guys, so we are done with the negativity. It's over. Let's head over to the positive stuff. Let's talk about the stuff I really love about the Nintendo Switch. The first thing I really love about the Nintendo Switch, and I'm just gonna keep it real, it's just the concept of the Switch itself. I love handheld gaming. That is my preferred way to play games. Growing up, I had almost every handheld console. I didn't have a Game Boy or Game Boy Color growing up, but I had a Game Boy Advance SP, I had a PSP, I got the Vita when it first came out, and I eventually ended up getting a DS. I wasn't a fan of the DS when it first came out, but I've grown to love it now as years have gone by. So if you guys maybe you're not aware, I mean, when the Nintendo Switch first came out, there was definitely a lot of expectation. you know, because the Wii U obviously didn't do well. It was a big failure, and there was a big question mark as to what is Nintendo gonna do. And when they announced this concept of a console that you could take wherever you go, I was a believer day one. And I think that was such a really awesome, original, and creative idea. It was one of one. Nothing else like the Switch existed back then, and it completely changed the market. Because I do remember, man, before the Switch came out, we were over handheld gaming for the most part. We were like, no, we understand that, you know, you can't do that portably. It is what it is. But I feel like now we really want that because the Switch came out, the Steam Deck is out. This whole kind of new revolution of what gaming can be on the go has completely changed our perception as to what we expect. And I think that's really cool, and it wouldn't have happened if Nintendo didn't, you know, kind of run with that idea. The other thing I really loved about the Switch is the library. Guys, I really do think the Nintendo Switch has, I think, the best library of any home console that Nintendo's ever released. For the longest time, I always believed the GameCube was Nintendo's best console. And obviously we all know in terms of sales, it didn't do well. But I'm talking about in terms of the games that the GameCube had. The GameCube had amazing games. Every major franchise up until that point was represented in some way, shape, or form. Mario had its own games. You had Mario Sunshine, Strikers, the Mario Sports games. Zelda had a really good presence on the GameCube. You had Twilight Princess and Wind Waker. And I think they have the Ocarina of Time. It was like remade on the GameCube disc. You also had F-Zero, Smash Bros. Melee, which basically, you know, even now is considered the best one out of the franchise. Just about every franchise that Nintendo had up until that point was represented in some way, shape, or form. And they also introduced new franchises. Pikmin, for example, being one, Animal Crossing being another. And I always felt like Nintendo was never able to kind of replicate that, but with the Switch, it is completely a different story. I mean, for starters, Breath of the Wild and Mario Odyssey, two S-tier games that came out on the Switch on the first year of the console's release, was absolutely amazing. As far as Breath of the Wild is concerned, I'm just gonna keep it simple. It changed the game for how we view Zelda games and how we view open world games. Mario Odyssey was an amazing 3D Mario game that we hadn't gone in such a long time. It was refreshing, it was creative, it was beautiful, amazing music, it was a lot of fun, it was a great game. We had other Zelda titles that came out on that thing. We've had Mario Sports titles come out. We've had the Wii U ports. Xenoblade. Xenoblade it's a franchise I'm not really into Xenoblade, but I do understand that was a dormant franchise that didn't have much life, that's basically been reinvigorated on the Nintendo Switch. Fire Emblem made a huge comeback on the Nintendo Switch. These are two franchises that were once considered, you know, dead, not popular, are now some of the bigger franchises on that console. Smash Bros. Ultimate, which is an amazing Smash Bros. Game and very historic for what it accomplished in terms of the characters that it had. Kirby also had a pretty good presence in the 2D form and in the 3D form. It's just really great. Yoshi had some games in there. And on Metroid is making a huge comeback right now. The Metroid Prime Remaster recently came out. Fusion is recently now on the Switch. We're probably gonna get Metroid Prime 4 soon. So Metroid as a franchise has finally made its triumphant return in a big way. Nintendo also doubled down on the Splatoon franchise. 2 and 3 have both been on the Switch and they're very successful. And the Pokemon games. We got a lot of Pokemon games on this thing. But for me personally, Arceus and Scarlet Violet being, I think, probably the best ones on the Switch, really. Arceus in the sense of like the catching mechanic, just kind of the exploring of the world, really kind of reopened my eyes to how Pokemon is. Really, for the first time in many years, Arceus was a treasure. Amazing game. And Scarlet and Violet, yeah, super controversial, a lot of glitches, a lot of issues, but if you beat the game and you get to that Area Zero in the post game, my god, there is a humongous twist on that story, something that I've never seen Pokemon do. For the first time, they definitely threw me off and surprised me in a big way. And that's just really the tip of the iceberg. There is an insane amount of games that are on the Nintendo Switch, and I'm not even including third parties. The Nintendo Switch had really good third-party support. Say what you want about that, they really did. The amount of indie games that are on this thing is absolutely, you know, immeasurable, on top of the fact that it has a lot of awesome retro games there as well. That's another thing I love about the Nintendo Switch. The Nintendo Switch is secretly one of the best retro gaming consoles ever. Now, I highly recommend you guys check out a video I did before where I talk about best retro collections on the Switch. But there's an insane amount of quality retro games that are on the Switch, and the Switch has really become kind of my go-to console for playing retro games on modern platforms. There's an insane library there, a lot of great titles that would normally be expensive if you try to go the physical route. The Switch, in that sense, has really helped me explore a lot of retro gaming history in ways that wouldn't be possible because of how expensive certain games are and just kind of how hard it is to collect so many things at once. Really, the last thing I guess I could say about the Switch is just kind of the overall journey of it all. The Nintendo Switch to me is, my God, I always loved the GameCube, but I might have to put the Switch at number one. I'll have to see what happens in a couple years from now. I'll see how I'm feeling. But the Nintendo Switch really has had a great life in terms of its gaming output, of what it was able to achieve in terms of kind of, through a sales perspective, whatever, leaving its mark in that sense. But really, I don't care about that stuff. I just care about the games and if I'm having fun or not. And I've had a lot of fun with the Nintendo Switch. I was very happy to finally have a console made from Nintendo that I loved, really, because before that it was a rough, man. I switched over to PlayStation, and I love PlayStation, man. I had the 3, I have 4, and I currently have the 5, and they're a great library there as well. But it's just really cool that I was able to finally have another Nintendo console with great games that I could play on the go. And I've had some really cool experiences, man. These games have been great. And there's a huge library that I have yet to explore. A lot of games that I still have not tried, man. When it's all said and done, whenever this thing goes away and it's put to rest, the Switch is gonna have a library that's gonna be insanely expansive for years. So yeah, man, honestly, 6 great years. I really love my Switch. Obviously now we're kind of at a point where we want something more powerful, I guess. Something more, more modern, I guess. I really want to move on from these Joy-Cons. I think it's time. But overall, the Switch was definitely, has been a great console. It still continues to be. It's still not done, There's still games coming out. A lot of great games. Tears of the Kingdom, I know it's going to be great. So there's still a lot more stuff coming that's going to really add to the legacy of this console. But if this really is the last full ride of the Nintendo Switch, if this really is the last kind of year, and let's say early next year, Nintendo's already releasing the next console. It's been a really, really awesome ride. Very happy that, the Switch has been a great console, and I've had a lot of fun with it. Alright guys, so that is my video on the Nintendo Switch. What do you guys think? What are your thoughts on the console? Did you love it? Did you hate it overall? What are the things you like and what are the things you don't like? Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know what you guys think so we could, maybe engage in some conversation and just kind of hear what your perspective is on this console's life. Alright guys, thank you all for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.